My name's Alex Rodriguez, reminding you, you don't need a contract, you need a team of pros.
Hey, what's up, guys? Alex with Bay Cities Construction here. Welcome to the show. It's episode 30. We're going to be talking about earthquake bolt down. We're going to be talking about bolting down your house. We're also going to recap my visit to Ridgecrest. We're going to talk about the damage over there. We have some props. We're going to talk about how to retrofit your house and what hardware you need. So, hey, guys, stay tuned. Hey guys, so we are going to get started. We got a really cool episode. I just want to recap last week's episode, episode 29, and we went to Ridgecrest. We covered what we found in Ridgecrest. We're going to recap a little bit today, but I just want to remind you, if you want to learn more about the earthquake of Ridgecrest and see some really cool pictures that we took, please visit episode 29. You can catch the replay. So tonight's episode, we're going to talk about seismic retrofitting for your house. We're going to talk about what to consider, what are some of the seismic hazards here in LA, and the first steps that you'll need to get started. So let's start with, what is a seismic retrofit? What is a seismic retrofit for a single family residence? And what can happen, right? Like, why do you need a retrofit? What's important? What type of a house requires a retrofit? This is an old craftsman house that was damaged by the Northridge earthquake. By the way, most people don't realize that the Northridge earthquake was less than 15 seconds, right? The earthquake that we just had at Ridgecrest was well over a minute, and it was more representative of the type of earthquake the San Andreas can produce. San Andreas could probably produce a little bit stronger earthquake than Ridgecrest, but the San Andreas fault is much larger, so it's going to cover a much larger geographic area. So the purpose of the bolt down, and by the way, we got certified with the California Earthquake Authority to do bolt downs for houses. So some of the stuff you can use to retrofit your house is this stuff here. Pretty easy to retrofit a house, relatively speaking. The techniques are relatively straightforward. You just are working in pretty uncomfortable situations. So we've got the bolt down, the bracing, and we're going to talk a little bit about this type of hardware. This happens to be Simpson hardware. I like Simpson, man. Any Simpson people out there, man? Give me some love. Post some likes on the description below. All right, so let's talk about this. Raised foundation. Older houses on a raised foundation are susceptible, particularly houses built in the 70s. Average home that fits this profile is about 53 years old. Mobile homes are also vulnerable, but the damage is different. You know, the mobile homes tip over and they slide off their piers, and you can relatively easily put the motorhome back up on piers. When you have the kind of damage that's inside that we're posting here in the picture. Where's the picture? This way? That way? That damage is a lot harder to fix. So you got to keep that in mind. And it's much cheaper to retrofit a house than to try and fix it once it's been damaged. So let's just kind of go over some of the pictures and the damage that we observed in Ridgecrest. This was a trailer park that slipped off of its piers. You could see that it displaced this line here was in line with the concrete. It actually displaced about 20 inches, 22 inches, something like that. This is some of the imagery of the desert, of the displacement of the ground. This part here was in line with that part there. Pretty big movement. Can you imagine what would happen if this occurred and your house was caught on one side of the rupture? That would be bad. So this is a picture of one of the retrofits that we did here in Torrance just recently for a very nice family. And they were kind enough to let us take a picture of their house. So let's talk a little bit about what we do, what we find important, and what we've learned so far, what we learned in Ridgecrest, and how we apply it here. A very typical bolt down utilizes these plates. This is a URF plate. URFP plate. There's a few different types of plates. This allows you to get in there. Like, see in the picture here, the mud sill. The mud sill is this area here. This component right there. Can you make my thing bigger? There we go. All right. This area right there. That's the mud sill that connects to the stem wall. So basically, this goes in with these bolts into the mud sill, and then the Titan bolts go down here, and that connects to the stem wall. Now, if you notice, there is new wood. We like installing that new wood, and I'll show you some diagrams of how we do this in some of the other slides. But the idea is you add new wood to help get a reliable transfer of seismic force from the building's floor system to the mud sill to the foundation, so that she moves together, moving in harmony. Harmony's good. So this is this is part of the assembly. This assembly isn't complete, but here you can see the Simpson plates, right? Connected to the mud sill, connected to the stem wall. And then here we've started to put our blocking. This is horizontal blocking, and this allows us to install these little connectors. These are awesome. These are Simpson L90s, and we can connect to the mud sill and then to our horizontal blocking. And we do that every 5 feet. And basically that will allow the mud sill to connect to the floor system in a very, very high quality connection. And then these little bad boys here, these are 835 clips, and these go from the floor joists, which are these, directly onto the mud sill. You can't see them in this picture because they're hiding behind the blocking, but they're in there. Believe me, it's really important. So adding wood really helps the diaphragm, or not the diaphragm, but the floor system connect well to the foundation system. So these are some diagrams. So you should know that when you go to the city or the local municipality and apply for a building permit, this is all volunteer. And believe me, they want to make it easy for you to get permits. So you don't have to get a full set of engineering plans. This right here is a set of drawings that we drew up for a customer, and it's very typical of the type of work that we do, and it really kind of captures what we're talking about. So these little A35 clips, that's these guys right here, these little A35s here, those will go, those will connect to the diaphragm of the subfloor, to the rim board, and we also use them to connect the mud sill to the rim board, right? And then we've got our blocking, and then that's connected with a much bigger angle, which is this bad boy here, the L90s. And what you see here, this is the seismic force capacity for each one of the connectors, right? So the the L90s, these will hold about a little bit over 400 pounds, 400 foot-pounds. The clips, these are quite a bit less. A lot of it has to do with also how many nails. You can see there's a bunch of nail holes in here. This one not so much. And now let's address the attention. There's kind of nail holes there versus these. So I want to address your attention over to this diagram over here, and this is the installation of the URFP plates. And you can see how it's offset, how the mud sill's offset. I like this plate because it really solves a lot of problems. None of those mud sills, of that wood mud sill, is ever flush to that. They do make a plate that's flat, and you know if you come across something that you can install that, by all means. So that's that diagram. This is how we attach it here. We'll use the 1/4-inch SDS screws, and then we bolt into the concrete using the Titan bolts. And man, I really, for the next episode, I'm gonna bring some bolts. I don't have any of those to show you, but they are really an amazing bolt. Basically, we can drive a pilot hole through the stem wall and vacuum it out and just run the Titan bolt. No epoxy necessary. It really solves a lot of problems. The bolt itself is relatively expensive compared to just an all thread, but the time that you save in labor really makes up for the cost of the bolt. It's really an amazing product. All right, so this is another this is an elevation of an assembling system, right? So we would call this whole thing an assembly. This whole section here would be called an assembly. And what you have here is a horizontal 4x material nailed to the floor joists and then nailed to the mud sill. And then you've got your URFP. And here you got your L90s. So the URFPs connect to the mud sill, and the L90s connect your mud sill to your blocking. Your blocking's connected to your floor joists, and your floor joists are obviously connected to the diaphragm. So the idea is that everything is together, and you're dragging, you're actually creating, you're using the lumber and all of these connectors to drag the seismic force back into the foundation. That is the goal. So this is obviously a nicer drawn up panel. Now this explains, or this shows, two field conditions that you would find, right? This section here is the standard elevation, like what I just showed you. And then here, this shows actually a cripple wall. Okay, and that's basically a small wall between the stem wall and the floor joist system. And typically, if you do not retrofit that, it is very likely that the house will suffer tremendous amounts of damage. The existing nails and the way that it's assembled now cannot withstand the seismic force that it's going to get. So people tell me this all, oh, well, we don't really know what the house is going to do. I says, well, we know what it will not survive. So the toenails and the way that it's assembled right now will not survive, let's say, the seismic force of 7,000 pounds or 6,000 pounds. None of those connections were ever designed for lateral force going this way and that way. None of those nails, they just can't hold it. So a better way to say this is, we hope we did enough. Okay, that's the right attitude to have about this, is to do as much as you can, and with the understanding that earthquakes are a very strong seismic force to be reckoned with. So here's another diagram of an assembly. On the bottom here, well, actually both of these represent a cripple wall, and those are the most vulnerable. By the way, if you have a cripple wall, there's a couple of things. Cripple walls may trigger you to have a full set of engineering plans drawn up. If your cripple wall is larger than 4 feet, 4 feet tall, you have to have engineering done. If your cripple wall is 4 feet and you have a second story, you have to do that. And if you're on a hillside, very likely you're going to have to get some engineering done. And it's really in your best interest, because engineers are very good at dealing with lateral force and coming up with a good design that'll make your house perform. It's all about performance. Hey, so I want to share with you this shake test. I don't know how many of you have actually seen it, but it's a really cool shake test. The Japanese put together a building that's actually very common. If you live down here in Hermosa Beach or Redondo Beach or Manhattan Beach, the tall and skinnies, this is a house that looks very similar in its construction to a tall and skinny. And I want to share with you what happens to this house. Are we going to take a quick break? Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to tee this video up. Don't go anywhere. Alex with Bay Cities Construction here. Come back and let's watch the Japanese shake test.
Do you know that a big earthquake can produce a wave that's 2 feet tall? Hi folks, I'm Alex Rodriguez, and I want to protect your house for $199 a month. I'm the owner of Bay Cities Construction, and after visiting Ridgecrest, it's clear to me that you can prevent a tremendous amount of expensive damage by having a seismic retrofit done to your raised foundation.
Have you ever wondered if your house needs to be bolted down? And have you ever wondered what could happen to your house if it's not braced and bolted down? Let's check this out. Let's get down and dirty. So this is how we do a bolt down. We bolt down the mud sill to the stem, then we connect the floor joist to the mud sill, and then ideally you connect the subfloor to the floor joist. That's the system to keep this connection intact while the floor is violently shaking.
Our low-cost financing makes this project affordable. The process is easy. It only takes 1 day. We live in earthquake country. Dr. Lucy Jones reminds us that earthquakes are random. We can't predict earthquakes, but we can prepare. Remember, it only takes $199 a month to protect your most valued investment. Get peace of mind with a Bay Cities Construction Seismic Retrofit. Protect your largest investment. Go to baycitiesconstruction.com and sign up today.
My question to you is, can you over-engineer a house for an earthquake? Look at that. You tell me. The big question is, did we do enough?
I'm Alex Rodriguez reminding you, you don't need a contractor. You need a team of pros.
Hey, so we're back. Are you ready to watch the footage of the shake test? Man, the Japanese really have this down packed. So let's watch the footage. Tell me what you think. I'd love to hear what your comments are. Go ahead and post them below. Let me make that bigger. It's buffering. Did I move it too much? Sorry guys, we're having a little technical difficulty, but don't go. The video is totally worth it. Don't go, don't go. Stay tuned. Man, it's kind of an interesting little triangle thing. Oh, darn it. We had it teed up and everything for you guys. Hold on a second, real quick. Yeah, let's go. Let's see. Hit enter. So in this shake test, I just wanna kind of walk you through it. There's 2 houses, right? One house that is 0. It doesn't have any hard any mechanical connections other than nailing, and then there's the other one that has a bunch of connectors and has reliable seismic drag pathways back to the foundation, right? So the idea is you have basically a side-to-side comparison, and what you're trying to do is evaluate how the buildings are behaving while the shaking is occurring, and you're also obviously going to evaluate the damage, right? So in this case, you have a house that stands still, and then there's a house that suffers what some people would consider catastrophic failure. But let's see if we got it teed up and share it with you. Tell me what you guys think. I'm really curious. Have any of you guys watched this video before? I'd be curious to see what you guys think about it as you watch this. Now, it's this is actually an older video, right? Filmed in the 90s. So here you go. Look at this. So the ground starts shaking. Our first little P wave hit. So from the time the shaking started, it was really at like 19 seconds. So from 19 seconds to 44 seconds, you have a total collapse. Pretty interesting stuff. Is the other one on the two-story one? So we're going to show you the two-story one. This is actually just a two. What you just saw was a two-story building. The other one that we wanted to show you is, I guess it would be considered a three-story building, but it's a tall and skinny configuration. It's very, very common to what we would find here in the South Bay. So check it out. By the way, as you're looking at that roof line, the building isn't supposed to move more than 2% of its height. So that would, you see it's moving way over a foot. And as it hits the apex, it just crushes under its own weight. That is crazy. And here's a recap of that other little video you just watched. You see those big chunks of stucco flying off? Stucco is not shear. Hate to break it to you. Hate to break it to you, clan checkers. Sorry. Okay, so what do you guys think? I'd be really curious to see your feedback on that, so please post in the comments below. I want to give a shout out to Oscar. Thanks for watching live. That's really awesome. And I lost my video here. So the next step that we're going to talk about some additional things to consider as you're bracing and bolting. Fire is a very significant threat, okay? And it's probably one of the most preventable. All you need to install is a seismic gas shutoff. It's probably going to cost you $350 installed, all right? If you actually reach out to us, we can set you up with the vendor that we use. We don't install that. We don't make any money on it. But I really, really want to bring awareness to the fact that this little device, this little red bell, can save your house. So the previous picture that I showed you, this is actually a fire. The fire, we talked to the neighbor. She explained to us how the fire came about. It was the people that lived there that owned this trailer. They were elderly couple, and as soon as the ground started shaking, they just ran out of the house. Now, one of them was cooking. It turns out that they left the pot on. Pot melted, some of the plastic on it fell on the carpet on the ground, caught fire, the whole thing burned. Think about what would have happened if, while they're cooking and the shaking starts, the seismic shutoff valve triggers and shuts the gas off. No fire. This really could have been prevented, unfortunately. And it's a total loss for the property owner. So, how to protect your building against fire? You have to have a seismic gas shutoff valve. The next thing you should consider is water damage to the house. Water damage can be caused if you're during an earthquake, your water heater is knocked over. Two things can happen. You can actually start blowing out water, right? Because the water hose is broke, and more dangerous condition would be the gas line if it severs and you're having a free flow of natural gas into the house. So take into account a seismic strap for your water heater is really important. By the way, if you haven't done so, you may want to consider installing a tankless unit. That whole unit goes outside, and you can get rid of the risk altogether and save a little bit of resources by reducing your gas bill. So I actually just installed this weekend at my house. I installed two very large fire extinguishers. I was joking around with Brian here at the office. I was saying that my mother-in-law is going to watch the house burn because the fire extinguishers are so big and heavy. I'm not very confident that she can use them. So I think I'm going to have to install another set of fire extinguishers that are smaller. Maybe those will be in the house. But I wanted to have two big fire extinguishers. Remember, if we have a big earthquake, the fire department may not be available, okay? You have to be able to rely on yourself. Or they may be fighting a bunch of fires all over the city. They may not have time to come to yours. The fire department is probably going to be the government entity that's going to be the most overstretched during a major earthquake. So consider the fact that you should have enough fire extinguisher or fire extinguishing capability to turn off a fire at your house or at your neighbor's house. Because if your neighbor's house catches on fire, not only do you like your neighbor, even if you don't like your neighbor, you may not want to let their house burn because it could trigger a fire over at your house. So take into account, look into it. I bought 2 fire extinguishers. They're actually kind of, I don't know, I guess they're a little bit on the pricier side. I think I paid $100 for the larger one. Yeah, I bought two of them. So you can definitely get them cheaper if they're smaller, but I wanted to get at least 2 heavy duty ones. I have one at the front of my house and I have one in the backyard so that we can access them right away. By the way, you should consider having an ABC, and I'm sure that other people on YouTube have all these fire extinguisher reviews, but consider that you want to be able to shut off, or you want to be able to extinguish electrical fires, grease fires, and what other kind of fires? Yeah, but it's ABC. It's for 3 kinds of different fires. Oh, I think it's like an oil-based fire. Anyway, look into it. Get a good extinguisher. That is the moral of the story. Now, your next thing is you should have an emergency kit. You should have a kit at home. You should have a kit in your car. I just bought these really cool containers at Home Depot, and I've got my little car kit. I also bought another kind of a longer container with some wheels on it, and I haven't used it yet, but we just got it about a weekend ago, last weekend, and I'm looking to see what I'm going to stick in there. But you definitely should have food. You should have first aid kit. You should have some water. Definitely have some water. I've got flashlights in there, and some tools. It's actually a really good idea to have some tools, particularly tools that you could use to shut off a gas line, to shut off or to turn a water main off, things like that on houses. So think about emergency. Think about you may not have access to your garage. You may be out driving around trying to get home from work, stuff like that. Typical seismic forces, what we saw in Ridgecrest. So this is some of the damage of what I'm going to go over right now is some of the damage that we found in Trona, Ridgecrest, and the surrounding cities. And I'm going to show you some pictures of what the earthquake or the seismic forces did to the ground in the desert. Really, really interesting stuff. So here what you see is the foundation disconnecting from the wall, right? And you can see it's pretty much a parallel crack, and you could obviously see with these little vents that it's a raised foundation. And what's happening here is that the connection from the floor system to the stem wall is severed, breaking, damaged, it's bulging, it does a bunch of different weird things. It does the engineers call it torsion, where it starts to really twist around. Here is a corner. You can see if you look closely at the stucco, it's all spider cracked, and it really is indicative of the wall experiencing torsion. Now, the corner here where I have my hand, that's basically the crack that's a little bit higher up. That starts to break at the connection of the wall to the stem wall. But here on this corner, this big chunk of stucco missing, that actually looks worse than it is in that piece, because that was old stucco that was put over the stem wall, and it just popped off. So the bigger damage occurs a little bit further up in this area here, where my hand is in the picture. Here is a great example of how it could have been prevented. What you have here is basically the foundation. At first, I thought that the house slipped off the foundation, but what actually occurred is that the house wants to stay in place. Let me give you a little bit of a visual cue here. I'm going to use my mug. So think about this as the foundation platform, and this is the house. During the earthquake, it's doing this. The ground is moving, but the house wants to stay still because gravity is pushing it into the ground. But the ground is constantly moving, right? So what ends up happening is when the ground stops moving, it does this. See how it's bulging? The edge of my cup is bulging right here. That's exactly what happens to the house when it's not braced. So when you brace and you bolt it down, the house is doing this. And granted, you may have more of a violent movement on the roof lines and stuff like that, but the idea is that you keep the house from breaking away from the foundation. That's the idea. And what you're seeing in this picture is the floor system that has protruded beyond the stem wall, in relation to the stem wall, and actually protruded probably about 5 or 6 inches. This is massive amount of damage. This house was unfortunately red tagged. So this diagram kind of gives you an idea of what the house, the structure is experiencing, and you're basically this side to side motion. That's called it's a lateral force, right? That's causing the house to move in that direction. And then if it breaks off the foundation, you could have it actually overturn. And you could see that this is not hypothetical anymore. The Japanese showed that in the testing, that you can actually have a house break away and roll over on its side. It's got to be the freakiest thing to see in real life. But the shake test indicates that is a very significant possibility. So natural hazards. Let's go natural hazards. I don't know how many of you have seen this map. This map is sourced from FEMA, and they have all sorts between FEMA and the USGS. There's all sorts of really cool maps. This map I think covers tsunami and the flood zones. So there's maps that cover liquefaction, which basically it's when the seismic waves hit the ground. But we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But here, I just want you to have an understanding of where you're at risk, right? So that you can plan accordingly. I live in Redondo Beach. I happen to be about 50 feet below sea level because in my subdivision where we live, it's actually below grade on, it's below grade of 180th Street. 190th, it's below grade. Not a good neighborhood. So this is a map that depicts the Great Flood of 1862. Now, thanks to Dr. Lucy Jones, I read her book, The Big Ones. I learned about I learned a lot about the history of California, but I also learned that California's largest natural disaster to date was actually a flood. It wasn't an earthquake. And it was the flood of 1862. And on here, this map, it shows the amount of water that was stagnant for a few weeks after the rain stopped. So the depth is in feet. So check that out. The blue stuff, the dark blue, that whole area was under 10 to 20 feet underwater. And the lighter colored stuff is slightly less than 3 feet. But this flood was so big that it marked the end of the gold rush. It literally put the brakes on the gold rush. So you want to read more about that, Dr. Lucy Jones's book. It's awesome. You should definitely buy it and read it. It's an easy read. It's very entertaining. And really you learn a lot about the history of California and the history of natural disasters around the world. So this map here captures the tsunami zone. Now check this out. This is kind of crazy, right? Like, look how deep the tsunami zone goes into in Venice and in Redondo. Okay, on the backside, if you're talking about Long Beach, look how deep it goes in. There's other maps where it has an overlay of the freeway. It's crazy. There's some sections that it suggests that you'll get flooding all the way into the 405. So wildfires, obviously last season was a terrible wildfire season, and many of those communities haven't even come close to recovering. By the way, regarding fires, you need to make sure that your fire policy will cover the foundation. 90% of all fire policies only cover the structure. If you have a total loss fire, the fire will damage the foundation and you cannot rebuild on it. You have to remove it. So make sure that you get a rider that covers your foundation. That's probably the biggest golden nugget that I'm going to give you tonight. But I was at a lecture where the city official for one of the cities up in Ventura really brought that point to our attention, because so many of her residents were devastated with uninsurable losses because the insurance covered the structure, but it did not cover the cost of the foundation. So the building owner had to get a foundation designed, cover the cost of its construction, and then the insurance company would cover the cost of rebuilding the structure. What an effing nightmare. Get your little rider. It probably doesn't cost very much money, but you'll be very happy that you have it. So this is kind of an indication. This is a little shot of Malibu, or the Malibu areas there. And, fires are scary. I think having an understanding and getting having an understanding that it's important to pre-plan, and getting together with your family and coming up with a game plan is really important. A game plan for how you're going to evacuate, how you're going to reach each other, and where, a common meeting point to get together so that you can go to the next step of a second location, evacuation location. Anyway, think about those things. This map here is scary. It depicts all of the known, and I say known fault lines, because did you know that before Northridge actually started to shake, nobody knew that fault was there? So these are the known faults. We could have a rupture at a fault that is unknown, and it would be total news to everybody involved after the fact. So look, guys, folks, we are in earthquake country. It's important for us to plan our lives accordingly, okay? We've got millions of people living in this area. These fault lines are not like in Trona where there's nobody there, okay? Or in Alaska. Alaska has an 8.0 earthquake. Yeah, there's nobody there. The moose, they freak out a little bit. Bears, they wake up a little bit. Not that big a problem. You have an 8.0 earthquake in the Los Angeles metropolitan area, we got big problems. Big problems. So, news to you. We live in an earthquake zone area. All right, liquefaction. Liquefaction is freaky, very, very freaky. By the way, for those of you that live in the South Peak like we do, look at that little arrow right there. That's Redondo Beach, guys, and Hermosa Beach. You know that the folks, the developers, those amazing individuals wanted to add real estate to these cities, and they dredged the bay and they filled it with dirt, and then they built houses on it. Well, it's liquefaction, which means, and also, it has to do also with the water table. Basically, what we're talking about is the soil behaves like water and the building starts to sink. All right? It's bad stuff. Not the best places to be building houses. But there's hundreds of thousands of them. So that's your map. That's your liquefaction zone, a little zoom up map. To me, that's crazy. It's crazy that area is so darn big. Look at Redondo Beach. That's where we live. Yay, Redondo. Well, if we die, we'll be buried. We'll just jiggle ourselves underground, and no one will have to spend any money or energy burying us. Okay, sorry, don't mean to be morbid. All right, let's go back to Trona and Ridgecrest. Surface ruptures, what caused it, all that good stuff. Oh, so this is called lateral spread. Lateral spread. Lateral spread is not what you put on your bagel in the morning with coffee. Lateral spread is part of liquefaction. I know it's a bad joke. I gotta do something. Part of liquefaction, and basically the ground moves. In this case, this is a very famous restaurant now. It's made famous by all the times it was on the news. We actually took this picture. Notice that this concrete block wall cracked all the way up, and the roof line. Boom. Now we've got some really cool drone footage. We're gonna figure out we're gonna post that and stuff. We got some really cool drone footage. We flew our drone over the building and got a really cool shot. So what's actually happening here, we didn't know this at the time, but luckily we were educated by our friends over at the CIOSC convention that we went to. So this building fell victim to lateral spread. Lateral spread. And what happened here is that part of this building slid to the left towards the lake bed. As the shaking occurred, that part of the ground actually broke and slipped away. That's why it was really funny. Well, it's not funny, but it was interesting, I guess is a better adjective for that. When this broke, it didn't displace, it just separated. And see how it separated more from the bottom than, it gets thinner and thinner as it goes to the top. Sorry, hit the wrong button. Oh my God, what's going on here? I hate working with the metal. Okay, as it got up higher, right, it got thinner and thinner, and there's basically all of this compression force on this part of the wall, and then there's this part of the building of the wall is in tension, right? It's pulling away from each other, so it's pulling away this way, and it's compressing up the top, and it was all caused by lateral spreading. All right, so this is what happened in the sand. Okay, it's a better picture in the sense that it clearly depicts what occurred, and all sorts of really cool geological phenomenon happening in the desert. It was really fun to go over there. This is my car, and in the background, to give you like a little bit of a perspective, right? Like this was probably almost 18 inches, surface rupture, 18 inches, a little displacement. So let's get back to protecting your house. You can download the free little earthquake safety checklist by going to softwareretrofitpros.com/checklist. Got a really cool little FEMA checklist that actually it's really easy to read, really easy to follow. So you can download that little PDF, and we're not gonna spam you and send you a bunch of junk. For those of you that have been listening and watching our podcast, reading our blog articles, we're about information, and that's how we like to get your attention. We trade valuable information for your attention in return. And then if you want to do business with us, I'd love to do that too. So you can also, I'm writing a book. That's a free assessment. I can't tell you about the book yet because we're not done writing it yet. So you want to book a free assessment of your foundation, go ahead and go to baycitiesconstruction.com and find the foundation and brace and bolt. Fill in your information in there, and I'll give you a call, or Brian or I will give you a call, and we'll get you started. So how to get started? We'll put together a quote for you, sketch out a game plan. We'll do a site plan of your house, measure the house, and come up with a workable retrofit solution for you. And typically about a week, 2 weeks. The work is done relatively quickly, depending on the size of your house, obviously, and if you have cripple walls or not. So that, folks, is the show. If you have any questions, I'd love to take any questions. Brian, we got any questions?
Mark, one of our viewers would like to know, how do you retrofit a house with a slab foundation?
So for that, typically you get some engineering done. Those houses will suffer some damage, but they're not at the same kind of risk that a house that's on a raised foundation is, because the raised foundation is typically 18 inches, could be 25 inches, and the higher up you are from the ground, the more the connections are going to be compromised, right? So that's why it's really important to retrofit those houses. If you're on a slab, things are going to break and they'll get displaced a lot. Very similar to the pictures you saw of how in the desert, things broke, the ground broke. So it isn't as no, I'm not going to say it isn't as important, but the risk is not the same. A slab foundation has less risk. If that makes sense. What else we got?
Another viewer, Jessica, would like to know, how long does a retrofit actually take?
Depending on how big your house is, it could be done as quick as one day. If you're gonna go with like a premium package where you add a lot of lumber, it could be 4 or 5 days. Typically, I would say it's 2 days, could be 3 days. The other thing that's important to consider is the access. So if you have a house with very little access, it really takes a lot longer to do this because it's so slow, try and navigate underneath the house.
Jason, another viewer, has a comment. He says, hey, I have an idea. Homes built before 1950 should have a required retrofit.
Like required by law? I don't know. Sillier laws have been written. But I think at this point, the importance of awareness, education, I think it's self-evident that if you invest $7,000 to bolt down your house, even if you invested $12,000 to bolt down your house, you saw the damage in Ridgecrest. I mean, that's over $100,000 worth of damage, and in the event that you have a fire or something like that, you could have a total loss. So it's a lot cheaper to try and prevent the damage, minimize the damage by having a bolt down done than by taking your risk with Mother Nature.
And there's another question. Marissa would like to know, how much does a retrofit usually cost?
I would say between $7,500 and $12,000. Depends on the size of your house and depends on how much wood you want to add. The other thing, obviously, is if you have cripple walls. Cripple walls require a lot more work, and it could be like a 1 week job versus a 1 day job. But we've seen retrofits, bolt downs that are in $5,500 to $6,500, for kind of a smaller house. So it varies, something like that. Yes, we talked about price. Can you believe it? What else we got?
I think that's pretty much it.
That's it. All right. Hey, guys, thanks for the questions. Really, it makes the show a lot more interactive, a lot more fun. And I want to thank you folks for watching. If you're watching us on the rebroadcast and you want to post some comments below, we read the comments. We read and respond to all comments. So by all means, please give us your feedback. It's awesome. It makes our content more interactive. And by all means, share it with somebody that you know. So if you want to learn more about earthquake retrofitting or you want to learn more about construction, visit our blog. We've got well over 400 blog articles at baycitiesconstruction.com. And all of this information is for you so that you can become a better informed consumer of construction services. Guys, I've been in business for 15 years. I've been doing residential construction, whether it's multifamily or single family residences. We have a lot of experience working on wood frame buildings, and we'd love to share our experience and have you benefit from our experience. So please visit us, give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about your project. And don't miss an episode. Like us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, smash that subscribe button so you get notifications when we have a new video. We post videos weekly, multiple videos. We obviously have the show, but we also have site. We also have, because we do so many different types of projects, we do house remodeling, kitchen and bathroom, house bolting, software retrofitting. We have a lot of really cool content that's varied. And if you want to learn more about it, by all means, subscribe and you will get notified. If you want to contact our office, our info is right there. My name is Alex Rodriguez. Thanking you for being part of the show, for watching the show. And I want you to know that you don't need a contractor. You need a team of pros. Bye.
name's Alex Rodriguez, reminding you,
You don't need a contractor.
you need a team of pros.